we're going to handle. Then we'll take a break and come back and deal with a few more of these. This one is a lot of fun to talk about, but it's really serious. Okay. Is my passion hot? Okay? Is my passion hot? You guys have Viagra over here? Apparently you do have Viagra. You know, I really wish there were a kingdom pill we could all take that would like automatically fire up our passion about what God has called us to do. But in the absence of such a pill, whose responsibility is it to keep your passion hot? It's your own. Now, friends, this is one that you're not going to want to own. You're going to want to say, it's someone else's job to pump me up. It's someone else's job to keep me enthused. It's someone else's job to keep me all excited about God's mission for my life. And I want to rattle your cage and suggest in the strongest of terms, it's no one's job but the person who's sitting in your chair right now. If you're not fired up, you have to take responsibility for your own passion. This is so hard to own. I meet church leaders all the time. How you doing? They say, well, you know, I'm dragging. Ah, you're dragging. Okay, how long you been dragging? Been dragging for about a year now. You know, my first reflexive thought is, you're poor followers. I just think, oh, it must be so painful for your staff, for your church, everybody. In the States, you know, we have different watt light bulbs, 25 watt, 50 watt, 75 watt, 100 watt, but you have different wattages. If you're going to choose, if you're a follower and you're going to choose, if you have the ability to choose, the freedom to choose, would you rather follow a 50 watt leader, a 75 watt leader, or a 100 watt leader? Answer me together. 100 watt leader. You do. You do. You don't want some dimly lit bulb leading you. You don't. You want wattage, right? You do. And you know what? People, like followers, teammates, deserve. They not only like, they deserve wattage. Okay? So, let's pose the question. How do you increase your wattage? How do you increase your passion? And you know what the answer to that question is? It's different for you than it is for me. I don't know what it is that keeps you all pumped up. I have taken responsibility for keeping myself pumped up. You know, my kids are grown now. They're out of the house, and my wife's working on a book, and she's all excited about that. I have more freedom than I've had in the last 25 years. I got a lot of freedom. And so I have choices now. I mean, I used to never have choices. I worked at the church. I came home to two little bandits in the driveway saying, "Great, Dad's home," you know. They were like vacuum cleaners sucking me into their lives. And it was a wonderful 25 years. It really was. I have great kids. But I mean, I just remember I finished one job and I had another job. Well, now I get home and like kids aren't there and Lynn's happy and I'm like, God, I have choices. So I noticed a little wattage decrease a couple years ago, and I thought, I gotta take responsibility for this. So I decided that on my Friday evenings, where, you know, some people, all is well and good, they can go out and watch a movie, go do this, the other thing. I decided, you know what I'm going to do with available Friday evenings? I'm going to go help a struggling church somewhere. I'm going to find some dedicated little struggling band of believers. And I'm going to go help them a little bit and remember what our church was like when we were in the movie theater scraping vomit off the floor so we could, they showed horror movies on Saturday nights. And so we'd come in on Sunday mornings, there'd be vomit all over the floor, dried vomit. We'd get on our hands and knees and wash the vomit off the floor. Then go home, take a shower, come back, do rehearsals, set up the sound and lights. We're in that theater for 6.5 years. I mean, it was pukey. All right, so anyway, I said to myself, I'm going to go help some struggling churches. So one of the churches I help is out on the west coast of the U.S., and I'd helped them raise a little money, and they're building their building, and the pastor, he wanted me to help them dedicate their building, so I did. And he says, you ought to see what's under the carpet. When we poured the floor of this auditorium, while the cement was still just a little wet, we had a believer service. All the believers of our church came together. We put boards out, and we walked very carefully on the boards, but then we all knelt by where we usually sit, and we etched the names of our unsaved family members and friends and colleagues and neighbors in the concrete. And we all grabbed hands, and we all prayed that someday those people would be sitting around us in church, redeemed and equipped to do the work of God in the world. He said, then we put carpet over, but once a month, we all go to those places, and we still stand, and we hold hands, and we pray that prayer. And one by one, those people whose names are in the concrete are joining our circle, doing like that. And I thought, these people care so much about their non-church, unsaved friends, they're etching their names in the concrete of the church auditorium. I got on the plane, flew back to Willow. I'm telling you, man, I was pumped up. I was really pumped up. So that's the heart of a biblically functioning community right there. And a while back, a church only about 90 minutes away from us called and asked if I would, it's a small church, asked if I would come and do a banquet. I hate speaking at banquets. I really do. Banquets and graduations. Oh, my. I'm speaking at my son's graduation coming up in May, and he's not showing. He's not even going to be there. He's going to his friend's wedding. Anyway, that's another story. So, anyway, this pastor says, would you speak at our evangelistic dinner? I said, I'm not a dinner speaking guy. And he says, well, here's the deal. We've prayed for this for a year. And this is our first big evangelistic outreach. And the way we're doing it is, you can't even come to the dinner unless you have a pagan on your arm. Like, that's the ticket to getting in as a pagan. I said, I'll speak at that one. So the night comes, and it's a Friday night. I've had a long week of ministry. I got to preach 4 times on the weekend. I'm like, oh, why am I doing this? I get in the car, drive 90 minutes up across the Wisconsin border, go into this supper club deal. As soon as I go into the building, I can tell this is a pagan-rich environment. You can just tell, can't you? The kind of conversation, the way people are, half the crowd's out having their last cigarette before they go in. And, I'm walking around, and one guy, I shake his hand and start talking to him. And I said, what are you doing at an event like this? He says, beats the hell out of me. My neighbor dragged me here. He says, there's heel marks across the parking lot, like that. And I said, oh, I think he's one of them, So anyway, then comes program time, and a lot of laughter, and they had just a ball. Then they did some great music, tremendous drama, and I gave a talk about how moral failures find forgiveness. And God blessed the talk, and at the end of it, I said, now, some of you need to admit right here and right now that you're a moral failure. You have not lived up to God's standard of perfection, and you need forgiveness tonight. And in my little message, I told them, when you're a moral failure, there's 2 ways that you can deal with that moral debt. There's the self-payment plan. You can pay for your own moral debt in separation from God forever. Self-payment plan, it works. It's worked for a long time. You can choose it. Or you can choose the third-party payment plan, that a third party would step in and pay for you what you don't want to pay for yourself. And I explained how Christ did that on the cross. And I said, how many of you want to get off the self-payment plan? How many of you would like to get on the third-party payment plan? admit your sin and ask Jesus Christ into your life. And I was just prompted, and I said, if that's you, why don't you stand up right where you are? Boom, guy stands up. Boom, another guy stands up. Boom, 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 boom. These people are standing up. Pastor told me after the banquet, more people got saved that one night than in the previous, 5 or 10 years of that church's history. I'm driving home that night, 90 minutes back to Willow. I can barely stay on the road because I'm bawling. And I'm saying, the gospel still works, God is still in the life change business. The Holy Spirit is still calling and wooing people to himself. And I was pumped up that weekend as I preached. I was really pumped up. There's a lot of heat, not much light, but a lot of heat. People went, wow, who plugged you into a light socket, Well, I don't know what books you got to read, what people you got to hang around with. Pastors sometimes, it's the funniest thing. Pastors will pull me off to the side at our training events like this one. And this happened in Perth, where we just were a couple days ago. A guy pulled me off to the side, and he said, Bill, I've been to every Willow Creek event that's been sponsored in Perth the last 6 years or 8 years you've come here. And it was like apologizing. And I said, well, why do you come? He said, it just charges up my batteries. So I told him what I want to tell all you. It's your job to keep your batteries charged. It's your job. It's not your pastor's job. It's not your elder's job. It's not your spouse's job. It's not my job. It's your job to keep your own passion hot. So, if you need to go to some conferences to get that done, read some books, listen to some tapes, be around some people, if you need to be in the presence of God in a certain kind of worship, friends, you have an assignment from God. You can pursue it with 25-watt passion, 50-watt passion, or 100-watt passion. But you will be glad every single day for all eternity that you gave it 100-watt passion for that brief span of time that we got to live on planet Earth. Do you agree with that? Yeah, it's your job. And now it's break time. So can I push the pause button right there? And some